Your organisation looks at the textbooks across the Middle East. What have you found?
Well, we've been looking at textbooks across the Middle East now for 20 years, and I think it's fair to say that we are in a particularly good moment right now. We're seeing that textbooks are being reformed. In Morocco, King Mohammed VI is looking at reforming the curriculum so that they will become more moderate. In Jordan, King Abdullah is doing the same. President al-Sisi is looking at textbooks in Egypt, and we reviewed a particular textbook which talks about the importance of a warm peace between Israel and Egypt, and frankly, which says that this is good for young Egyptian people. So generally, there are improvements in textbooks in the Middle East as governments realize that radicalization of young people happens in the schoolroom, but textbooks can be a fantastic barrier against radicalization. I would say that all is not completely rosy in the garden. The Iranian textbooks have unfortunately got slightly worse. And in Turkey, we're seeing the Turkish government taking out the good values which we have seen in Turkish textbooks, and unfortunately they are becoming more radical.
The Oslo Accord signed in way back in early 90s placed a lot of importance on education in the peace process. How has that been brought forward and developed?
Well, part of the Oslo Accords, of course the most important part of the Oslo Accords was the recognition of Israelis of the Palestinians and their national rights and Palestinians of Israel. The PLO signing of those letters of mutual recognition were incredibly significant. And of course, part of the Oslo Accords was that the Palestinians would have a ministry of education, would be educating their own children as they need to do. And by 2000, they had produced and distributed their first full curriculum in the West Bank, in Gaza, and in East Jerusalem. There have been ups and downs in that curriculum, and now we are at a particularly important moment because in August of 2017, for the first time, the Palestinians completely reformed their curriculum. They did this with the support of European member states and with the EU itself.
You're here in Brussels today to meet parliamentarians, but also members of the European External Action Service. What is your expectation from these meetings?
Well, we have just produced a report on this new reformed curriculum, and I have to say that the results are extremely discouraging. The reason we are in Brussels today, and we will be talking to members of Parliament and to the External Action Service, is because we're going to be asking them to bear as much influence as they possibly can on, first of all, reading and understanding our report, and second of all, going to the Palestinians and asking for two things. The first is that positive information about the possibility of peace will be put into the curriculum, and secondly, to take out some of the material in that curriculum, which is frankly terribly radical. To go into a little bit of detail, first of all, within the curriculum, we see no mention of peace, of a political peace between Israel and the Palestinians. This is astounding, and that means that generation after generation of young Palestinians have no idea what peace should look like. We see no explanation of that mutual recognition that I spoke about, the fact that the PLO recognized Israel, that Israel recognized Palestinian national rights, that two states living side by side, Israel and Palestine, is what we are all aiming for. And, you know, the Europeans are aiming for this too. So what we have is a curriculum which, instead of teaching that, teaches martyrdom. It encourages young people to sacrifice themselves. It teaches a concept of eternal war and of one state, of this Palestine from the river to the sea. You know, these aren't European values, and these are not the values that, if you like, the Europeans are transferring so much money to the Palestinian Ministry of Education for. We are absolutely convinced, are going to be horrified when they see the results of our report. And we're saying to them, you know, the Palestinians have to be teaching young Palestinian people their national identity. They have that right and that duty to do that. And that national identity has to be free of hate. It has to respect the other. It has to teach peacemaking. If it doesn't have those values, then we are all going to be in big trouble in the region.
Can you give me an example of some of the things that you found in these textbooks?
So young Palestinians from the age of 9 are told every day to repeat a poem where they sacrifice their blood and throw out the usurper. Essentially, they are being encouraged to die, to act as martyrs. We see running through the whole curriculum, including in maths, where they are told to add up martyrs from the first intifada and second intifada and come out with the sum. We see in physics that they are being shown an example of a young boy with a slingshot to explain Newton's second law. There are better ways to teach physics and maths than to encourage young people to sacrifice their lives. And we see this over and over again. Jihad, war, as the most important thing that a young person can do. I genuinely do not believe that these are the most important values that you should be giving young people. You should be teaching them about the possibility of peace, not about the inevitability of constant war, jihad, and sacrifice, and that they themselves must die in order for a Palestinian state to become a reality.
Can I ask you about the Israeli curriculum? Does it address issues like the Nakba, illegal occupation, illegal settlements? Is there balance in this approach?
The Israeli curriculum is by no means perfect. No curriculum is. You know, it is very centered on Israel. It does talk about Israeli and Jewish victimhood. Some would argue that these are historical facts. Some argue that one shouldn't talk too much about one's victimhood. But in the particular area that we are looking at, which is how Palestinians are viewed, we see an holistic view of Palestinian nationhood. The Nakba, the word that the Palestinians used to express their own disaster in 1948, is fully talked about in the curriculum. The word itself is used in the curriculum, and young Israeli students are asked to place themselves in the position of Palestinians in 1948 and to describe that disaster. This is, part of what I think is an holistic view of, that Palestinian nationalism. But I think more important than that even is the idea of peace. That peacemaking as the way to resolve conflict is the central tenet of the Israeli curriculum, running through literature, geography, history, across the gamut of the curriculum. And it can get better, all curricula can get better, but I think since 2000, we've seen great improvement there.